When you start, you're going to see this screen. It allows you to set up your microphone and your camera, make sure that it's exactly what it needs to be, and you can also test anything if anything's not working. Then you just click Join Session. Once you join, you're going to see on the right side, you have this panel. This is like the most important panel because it allows you to interact with your student and give your student permissions. So across the top, you're going to see your internet connectivity, and you're going to see it says videos. When you see the word videos, next to that, you see the expand button. If you click this, you will enlarge both videos, and then when whoever's speaking has the most screen time here. So if my student starts speaking, they will then have the bigger screen, and we can always turn it off with this toggle switch right at the top. Go ahead and press the down arrow. We go back to the regular screen. All right, next to that, you're going to see the video settings. So if I open it up, this again allows me to check my microphone, test anything if something's wrong during the session. And then next to that, we have these three switches right here. The eye does not affect my side, but it affects my student's side. So what I've just done was made the video not visible to my students. And the up arrow here collapses it. So for my view only, I cannot see the videos. This children will still be able to see the videos if they don't click that button. So remember, if you don't want them to see it, you need to press the I. The negative sign here undocks the camera. So if I don't like it over there, I want it somewhere else, I can undock it and I can move it around the screen wherever I want it. Now realize this does not in any way affect the student. This is just you. Okay, and now I'm going to turn my camera off for the rest of this video. I can go ahead and down here where it says attendees, click the camera, and I've disabled my camera, and then I can now disable my student's camera. All right, down here where it says attendees, you're going to see that we have two attendees, and they name them right down here. Now this button right here mutes both of us, so it's already crossed out because both of our mics are off. Okay, next to that is the same three buttons. They do the same things. We can hide the list from students, we can collapse it just on our side, or undock it and move it around. Down here is the permissions. Okay, so right now you see there's a red, and that shows that it's not on. So if this was crossed out and I clicked it, it would ask the students, do you want to allow permissions for your mic? But because it's not crossed out, they actually do have permissions. So they'll start the session with permissions, and then if you cross it out, they will not have permissions anymore. So if I click it here, now I've disallowed their permissions. And if I unclick it, now they have the option to reject permissions or accept permissions to use their microphone. And then, of course, if they want to turn it off, they don't have to wait for you. They can turn it off all on their own. Then if we keep going next to that, you see the camera. So right now they don't have access to the camera, and I can give them permission to use the camera here as well. And then next to that, I can give them access to the teacher tools, which are these tools on the right side of the purple header. Okay, and then the next button right here gives them access to the drawing tools or whiteboard access, able to manipulate the whiteboard. And those are the tools on the left of the purple header, as well as the tools on the left side in the gray bar. Now notice students can see them, but they won't be able to use them unless you give them permissions. And then we have a chat icon. Now, if you click the chat icon, you create a private chat, which being that there's only one student in there with you, you might not want a private chat. This chat box here would work just fine for that. And you can both chat, and you can also add emojis, or little rewards, stickers for your kids as well. And your student has full access to the chat unless you click the I and make it not visible to them. Okay. All right, so I'm going to turn on the whiteboard access for my students. And now you're going to see their mouse on the screen, and they will actually see my mouse on their screen. as well. So let's go through the tools. The first tool here is just a pointer. You cannot draw anything, you cannot do anything. It's just a selector tool or pointer tool. The next tool is your pointer. So with this tool, you cannot select anything. You can just move your pointer around. With the selector tool, you can now select items, which I'll explain a little bit further. And then you have your pencil tool. So if I wanted to draw something on here, I can draw, and I can switch over to my highlighter by clicking the arrow, and now I can use my highlighter to draw things. Now I'm noticing these lines are really thin, especially for a highlighter. I kind of want lines that are thicker. I can go up here, and there's 3 tools here that are really important. One, this is my fill color. So right now, being that it's highlighter, it's a default of white. But if I was using the pencil tool, I can change the inside of my lines to be whatever. I'm sorry, if I was using a shape tool, I can change the inside of my lines to be whatever I want it to be. Here, though, is the stroke color or the line color. So right now, the highlighter is set at yellow, but let's say I want a blue highlighter, I can choose that. And then let's say I want thicker lines, I can actually just increase my line width right here. And so now when I draw, my highlighter is thicker. And then next to that, you have your back button and your forward button. Okay, then if I go down to my tools, I now have a line. Let's draw a line. It's going to be a really thick line because it keeps, it remembers the last stroke size. So if you want it to go back down to 3, you have to reset it. So this is what I was talking about. I created my line, but if I go to the pointer tool and I click it, it doesn't do anything. All it does is shows my student where I am. But if I switch over to the selector, it looks the same. My cursor looks the same. But now I can select that line and I can manipulate it. If I want to move it, I can move it around the screen. And as I move it, my student sees this movement. Even though I haven't let it go, they see this. And I can turn it. Oop. I can turn it. I can also extend it, rearrange how it looks with the selector tool. All right, so if I was to draw a line, like I said, I could rearrange it or manipulate it any way I choose. And then if I click the arrow, I can do arrows, bent lines, and then grids. The grid tool is really cool if you're doing like an area class or a perimeter class for math. Now, the cool thing about the grid is if I say I want a grid that has this many boxes in width and this many boxes in length, I don't want to make it as big as I actually want it when I'm making the grid. I want to actually go up to my selector tool and then resize it this way. Because now I keep the same amount of boxes in width and length. I just made the boxes bigger. If I was to, in my selector tool, just draw it straight from that, all I'm doing is increasing my width and length, and the boxes are going to stay tiny. Okay? So that's a cool little trick. And then we can just undo that. Now it's very, some people might want to say, you know what, let's just click the backspace button, let's take it away, but guess what? That doesn't work. Okay, you can either use undo, redo, or you can trash the entire whiteboard. Okay, then we can go down, we can add shapes. Here's a plethora of shapes that you can add, and you can fill them with different colors using our fill tool and our stroke tool. You can change the line color. For the eraser tool, you're going to notice it erases exactly where you're pointing, but you're also going to notice it does not erase grids. So what you need to do is, for demonstration purposes, I'm going to draw a line, and then if I use my eraser tool, it will erase it just like a real eraser, okay? But it won't erase the grids. And then I can just undo to get rid of that line. All right, we can also add text. Now, when you start typing your text, it comes out in this size naturally as default. So just like shapes, if you want your text to be bigger, you click the select tool, and then you click the select tool, and then you can resize. Now the inner or the darker boxes on the corners are not to make bigger. That just helps you move it around. You want to click the white box on the outer part, and that will make it bigger. Now what you'll notice is that our whiteboard is infinitely big. As I made that bigger, my whiteboard actually got bigger as well. So if I slid this over here, you'll notice that my whiteboard is getting even bigger as I move it around the screen. Okay? So just move things around out of the way and your whiteboard gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Then the next fun tool is your equation tool. Now, for this tool, you click it and then it won't do anything until you actually click the whiteboard. So if I click the whiteboard, my toolbox comes in. And then right down here, I can type in equation, or I can use some symbols. You can also do this with just a text tool if it's a simple equation. So let's do 2, and then I'll go to my symbols, times, and then let's do 3. I have to go down here and click 3. And then I press add and close. It adds it right to my window and I close that box. So now you have an equation that you can manipulate in the same ways. And your student should also see that equation right on top of the grid here. Okay, and then of course you can resize the equation as well. Okay. Again, in elementary school, you're probably using simpler equations that you could just type out, but if it's for some reason an order of operations class or something like that, you can always use the equation editor. This is a button that we probably wouldn't use at elementary school, so you can explore that on your own. And then down, you're going to see the trash can, which we can use to clear our whiteboard completely, which we're not going to do right now as well. Then next you have some settings, and then after that you can report a problem right to BrainCert, which is the company that produces this whiteboard. If you're having an issue that you think they should be aware of, you can report it here. Okay, so let's go across the purple header. Right below the header, you're going to notice this orange plus sign. This allows you to add infinite amount of whiteboards. So then you can toggle between whiteboards. If you have certain problems set up on different whiteboards, you can do that ahead of time as well. And we'll try and keep all sessions open a few minutes before they start so you can go in here and set it all up before your students enter. And then you can also just double click on the title here and you can rename them just to keep yourself organized any way you want. Okay, now in the very center of the purple header, you're going to notice it tells you how much time you have in the session. I remember it is an expectation that you teach the entire session. So you should not leave the session until your time goes to 0. And you should not start your session with your students until the actual start time of your lesson. All right, next to that, you have your full screen. So instead of being inside of your browser, it will actually take up the entire screen if you click full screen. We have breakout sessions, which you probably wouldn't use since we're individual basis. And we have polls, which you can explore on your own. This button allows you to insert pictures or images. So if I was to select it, then you would see that I can now insert a whole bunch of different images. So let's say I want to insert this one. I press open, a little loading, and here is my image that I just inserted. And then I can, of course, move it around. Now, you have the same options as before. I can select this and resize it. So whatever the size of your image is before you bring it in, that's the size it's going to be. So if it's a really large image, you need to make sure that you resize it so it's visible on the screen. Then you can go over to your video tool. Now your video tool is super cool, I think. So if I open it here, it allows you to put a link to a YouTube video or a Vimeo video. So I found a page on YouTube, so I'm going to switch over here. I'm going to copy the URL and switch back over. And then when I click paste here and I click play, it actually shows me my video right here. Okay. Now, I notice most times it takes the ads out, but you should be careful if there is ads that maybe you skip over it, you mute it, control it in a way so that your students don't see this. Now, from the student perspective, you're going to notice that they see the video in a window just like this. So they are able to see this portion of the screen. They don't see your link. They don't see this button that says play from library. Okay. And they don't see the toggle switch at the bottom. They only see the video in a window. Now, you have the option to play. When you play, it plays for your student and for you. When you pause, it pauses for your student and for you. Okay. Volume controls that you set is for your student and for you. You're going to notice this full screen button. Now, that's the only one that's not for your student and for you. If you click the full screen, you're full screening it for yourself. Your students is not going to be full screen. Okay. And they don't have the access to make it full screen unless you toggle this switch on. Now, once I toggle that on, your student should have full access to all of the controls for the video. They should be able to play it, pause it, control their own volume, and control whether they want it full screen or not. Like I said, if you play it, your student will see that. All right, and we'll close that. The document tool is particularly cool, especially if you are a reading teacher and you want your students to have access to a document. So if I go to my document tool and I click choose from my computer, and then let's find a document that we can use. Let's use this one. And I click open. It loads for a few seconds. It's just compressing it and making it available here. And then it opens on a separate whiteboard. So it's not going to interrupt anything that you're doing because it's going to open completely on a separate whiteboard. And then this is a document that you and your student can manipulate. You can highlight over it, all of the regular tools. Now up here you get some new tools when you insert a document. You can flip pages. So it kind of puts it like a slideshow. So even when I'm scrolling down, I'm not going to see the rest of the pages in my document. I need to click over. And now I see page 2. And then I can go all the way to the end by clicking that button or go all the way to the beginning. Here, for this one, this is going to rotate your document. This is going to make your document compressed so you can see the whole thing on a screen, or just full size it. And then of course you can zoom in or zoom out your document as well. All right, what you need to realize is while your student or child in your class has access to the whiteboard tools, they also have access to all of these tools at the top. So if you don't want them to be able to flip ahead of you or turn the page, then you need to take that tool away from them. So right now we'll have my student flip through the pages and notice that it flips for me and it flips for them. All right. So like I said, if you don't want them to have access to that, you need to take that away. So I'm going to go ahead and take their access away right now and go back to the front. Now, as far as the fit to screen and zoom in and zoom out, that only affects your page. Your student will not see you zooming in. They will not see you zooming out. Okay. So if you want to point their attention to a particular part of the screen, you will need to scroll down and use your pointer to bring their attention to a particular part of the screen. So right now they will see that my pointer is at 4 half sheets. So these are all the features that you would probably use on this whiteboard software. Now, there's a couple tips that I want to share, and that is if for some reason when you enter the class and your student enters the class, you're seeing issues, what you need to do is make sure that both of you exit the class and re-enter. Our recommendation is before you even start teaching, you test things, make sure your student can see when you're drawing on the screen, make sure your students can see your equations, make sure that you can hear each other and you can both see each other, although the camera might be due to connectivity issues, and if your student does not have good connection, the camera might not work, so you might just have to depend on audio. But if you're noticing something aside from the camera is being a little funky or wonky, then go ahead and close your session and re-enter. Now, there is some tools, or actually I think it's only one tool that the student has that we don't have, and I'm going to let our pretend student explain that to you.
So the student has one button at the top where it says Teacher Tools, and they will always have access to this button, and that is to raise a hand. So when they press raise the hand, the teacher will see it on their end, and it'll show next to the student's name that they have raised a hand.